I thought it was a simple family night. Nancy told me family only. I said, I understand, and I walked away. The restaurant smelled like candles and slow jazz. They smiled for pictures. They drank to a life I had built. That night I did not storm in. I left, quiet, calm, but I left a plan, a surprise they never saw coming. By morning the party was still warm. By noon their world had a hole in it. I learned how fast a life can change, and I learned how to win back what was mine. I live in Houston. The house sits on a quiet block. Kids play on the corner. Barbecue smoke drifts down the street on Sundays. My name is Benjamin. I am 52. I work hard. I keep my hands busy. I keep my head steady. Nancy is my wife. She has a laugh that fills a room. Her curls bounce when she walks. We cook together. We go to church sometimes. We say goodnight. We share the same bed. The house feels lived in. The couch holds our Sunday naps. The kitchen knows our rhythms. The kids from the block drop by. Neighbors bring collard greens. Auntie calls every Wednesday. That is our life. Our mornings are small and steady. Coffee. The news low on the TV. Nancy hums while she dries dishes. I lace my shoes slow. We kiss on the porch. She tucks a ribbon in our son's hair like she has always done. Our son laughs loud. He runs through the house with a toy car. Sometimes I watch him and feel my chest tight. I think about time. I think about legacy. I think about being a man who protects his family. Nancy works part-time. She keeps a neat planner. She dresses sharp. She loves the color red. She and her ex-husband, yes, they still talk, co-parent well on paper. I met them halfway. We built trust like a slow brick wall. People said we were good together. Church folks nodded. Family came for Sundays. We hosted cookouts. Life felt full. The house at night glows soft. Lamps throw warm circles on wood floors. Jazz plays low. The fridge hums. Her perfume hangs in the doorway. I can tell when she's in the room without seeing her. We fall asleep to the same rhythm of breath. I trusted that rhythm. I trusted Nancy. I trusted us. Then she told me about the birthday. Family only, she said. Her voice was calm. Her fingers picked at the napkin. I felt a small tug of something that night. A tiny off note in a song we had sung for years. I said, okay. I walked out the door. I did not argue. I did not push. I left. But I did not walk away from the feeling that something was wrong, and that feeling would not let me sleep. At first it was small things, little edits to our life that did not make sense. Nancy would leave the room and take her phone with her. She would laugh in a way that sounded rehearsed. Notes appeared in her planner I did not know about. Names, times, places. I would ask, you good? She would smile and say, yes, babes, everything's fine. Her eyes would flick away. Her hands would find the rim of a glass as if steadying herself. I started to watch. We used to share a nightcap. Now she said she was tired. Early to bed, she would tell me, but the lights in the guest room stayed on. I heard soft talking late at night through the wall once. I told myself it was the TV in the spare apartment downstairs. I told myself a lot of things to sleep. Her phone began to buzz at odd hours. Silent, vibration only. She would pick it up quick, hide the screen. The face I loved would tighten for a second when the message came. She changed outfits more. New dresses, new heels. She would stand in front of the mirror and tilt her head like she was trying on a different life. She wore red more. The color red became common in the house. She stopped bringing up we in the small talks. Where I used to be part of plans, I was now a guest. She started saying, I'll handle that, in a tone that closed the conversation. I felt the edges of our togetherness fraying. One Saturday she left with our son and went out for brunch. She said it was with family. The car smelled like cinnamon and leather when she returned. Her laugh on the porch sounded a little too full. Later that night I found a receipt under the cushion of the couch. A name on it I knew, not a friend, not someone friendly. The notes on it were small, a restaurant, a table for three. Family only, the line from that first night replayed in my head. I put the receipt back where I found it. I did not say nothing, but I did not leave it alone. People started to notice me watching. Cousin Muckas texted, you good, bro? You look like you carrying a lot. I wrote back, just tired. I did not tell him the truth, not yet. My voice stayed calm around Nancy. I kept the home nice. I watered the plants. I made coffee. I smiled when she walked by. but inside I was taking inventory. Every laugh, every text, every late night. She became defensive when I asked simple things. "Why you so nosy?" she said once. Her tone was a soft cut. I would freeze, then I would walk away. I did not want to push her, I wanted answers, but asking felt like a threat, so I watched more. I listened for footfalls down the hall. I learned the rhythm of her breath when she lied. It is a small thing, stiffer, shorter, like a violin string pulled too tight. One evening I saw a picture on her phone while she left it on the countertop. It was a photo of our son blowing out candles, but behind them was a man I recognized. The face was half turned. I blinked. My fingers went numb. I slid the phone down and sat on the counter like nothing was wrong. My heart moved like a bell that had been struck. I put the phone back in the same place without comment. I tried to catch her off guard. I asked about work. She said, "Slow day." I asked about family. She said, "All good." I asked about the restaurant. She said, "You would not want to spoil the surprise." She smiled in that practiced way. I felt like I was on the outside of a room I had built. The walls changed color. The pictures on the wall shifted. I could hear voices in another room. I could not open the door. Late nights kept getting later. I began to follow small threads. A call dropped in the car at 2 in the morning. A laugh that sounded too intimate. A pattern, but I could not name it yet. I felt like a man watching his house through keyholes. One more misstep, one more clue, that's all I needed. I kept waiting and watching, and the waiting began to feel heavier than a stone. And then I found proof I could not unsee. It was after midnight. The house slept easy. The street was quiet. I had walked in from a late errand. The porch light made a small pool on the steps. The TV was off. The only sound was the quiet hum of the fridge. I set my keys down and heard laughter through the open window. Not our laugh, not at home. My hands left a print on the wood rail. I stood still. I moved to the hallway. The guest room door was cracked. Light spilled like a secret. My pulse stepped up. I slipped inside like a shadow. There on the bed was a stack of photos. Not old family photos, new ones, candids. My son's birthday cake. Nancy and the man I knew, her ex-husband, embraced. His face was close to hers. He smiled in a way that belonged to a memory I had not kept. My breath got short. I picked up a photo. The paper felt thin and real. The picture showed them at the restaurant, my son in the middle. They looked like a family. My stomach folded in. My hands shook. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, but the feel of the photo was sharper than any rehearsal. I could smell the faint perfume on the paper. I felt the weight of it like a slap. A text buzzed on the nightstand. My name in the thread from an unknown number. "Thanks for understanding tonight," it read. The words sat there like glass. I read it again and again. My chest hollowed. I wanted to throw the phone. I wanted to call Nancy and scream. I wanted to wake the house and light it up. But I stood quiet. I let the house keep sleeping. I let myself keep moving. I found other things, an envelope with tickets, a calendar marked with secret meetups, a printed email chain where decisions were made about parties and photos. Names repeated, family only. That phrase, like a lie, kept showing up. I sat on the edge of the bed and wrapped my hands around my face. My breath came like rain on a tin roof. I felt betrayed in the bone. I thought about walking out then. I thought about waking Nancy with the photos in my hand and asking her why. But the man I am does not move on instinct. I listen to the air first. I count the sounds. I let the silence speak. I put the photos back where I found them. I left the room like a ghost and closed the door with care. I wanted time to breathe. I wanted time to plan. I wanted a measured move. When I lay down that night, the bed felt foreign. The sheets held the warmth of two. I stared at the ceiling and let the room fill with the sound of my thinking. I pictured talk with relatives. I pictured the court. I pictured shame and fight and loss. My hands did not stop trembling. I thought about my son. I thought about his face in those photos. I thought about how he looked like a bridge between me and that other life Nancy kept stepping into. I did not sleep. The house was quiet except for my mind. My chest ached in a way that felt like a warning. I whispered to the dark, "You will not take what I built without seeing the cost." The words settled and grew heavy. The next morning the world would still spin, but I was a different man then. That night I realized everything was about to change. I woke early. The sun was a thin knife through the blinds. My hands felt steady. I dressed slow. I made coffee that tasted like duty. I moved through the house like a man who had a map he had drawn in secret. I started with things that made life operate: bills, accounts, papers. I learned how much quiet strength a man can gather in small acts. I opened the bank folder. I read our accounts like a book. I had kept some things joint. I had kept some things separate. I moved small amounts. Legal, clean. I called my lawyer only to check. I changed passwords. I set notices to my phone. I made a copy of every receipt I had found. I took photos of the photo. I cataloged dates. I printed bank statements and put them in an envelope. My hands were calm. My mind was a machine. I did not tell anyone. Cousin Marcus noticed I was distant and asked if I was okay. I said, "I'm fine." The truth felt heavy in my mouth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn the house down, but I chose quiet. I had to think of the son. I had to think of the legacy. Anger is loud. Strategy is quiet. I learned that anger helps a man start but does not help him finish. I followed their calendar. I learned every date. I traced the pattern of dinners and meetings. I began to play a role. I kept hugging Nancy in the kitchen. I kept asking about our son's school. I kept that smile that had stopped me from becoming a storm. People saw a man who held it together. Nancy fell back into the rhythm of that man. She let her guard down. She thought I did not know. That was her first mistake. At night I worked. The glow of my laptop was a small moon on the desk. I called a friend who understood money. We went over options. I moved joint investments into separate accounts. I made sure our son's name was protected. I learned legal steps. I made quiet plans for custody if it came to that. I prepared documents. I did not feel cruel. I felt like a man building a barrier against a wave. I planted little traps of my own. I put a voice-activated recorder in the study. I saved suspicious emails to a folder called Family. I kept receipts synchronized. I booked a meeting with Nancy's employer under the guise of a family concern and quietly confirmed some details about her position. Nothing illegal, everything smart. I used the law like a scalpel. Some nights the house smelled like her perfume and regret. I would lay on the couch and listen to the laugh track from old shows, pretending the laughter meant something. Friends would come by and say, "Ben, you look peaceful." I let them say it. I smiled and kept planning. I had to be two men at once: the man who cuddled his son, the man who planned a quiet end. I went to church and asked for guidance, not for revenge, for clarity. The pastor put a hand on my shoulder one Sunday and said, "You are a rock, Benjamin." I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell the pews how it felt to be built and then quietly dismantled from the inside. I did not say a word. My plan grew like a slow tide. I gathered proof. I made sure everything was documented. I traced transfers. I kept quiet calls on record. I spoke to a financial advisor. I put in place insurance protections. I arranged for keys to be changed if needed. I talked to a private investigator. The investigator was discreet. He left reports in my inbox labeled with times and dates. He took photos at public places. He confirmed the pattern. Every small action felt like a stitch. I sewed a case. I was not a man driven by heat. I was driven by preservation. My heart ached. My hands were steady. I loved my son too much to make a spectacle. I chose to break things down where the law would see them. I chose to leave no room for emotion to blind me. There were nights I cried. I did not hide that. I did it alone in the garage with the car lights off. I let the grief wash and leave a residue of iron resolve. I rehearsed what I would say. I rehearsed the look I would give her when the time came. I would be calm. I would be precise. I would be quiet power. The day I chose to confront her came on a warm afternoon. Our son had a soccer game. The sun was high. People cheered. The world seemed ordinary. I looked at Nancy on the sideline. She clapped for our boy with a brightness she always had. But she did not know the depth of the silence brewing in me. I walked to the car after the game with a folder under my arm and a resolve in my chest. I was no longer the same man. We came home from the game. The house smelled like cut grass and hope. I made lemonade for our son. I set the folder on the kitchen table where she could see it. The afternoon light caught the edge of the paper like a blade. Nancy's phone buzzed. She silenced it and set it face down. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands did not shake. I had practiced this. I had rehearsed it without letting anger color my words. I called her name in a voice that was flat and soft. She turned, curious. The son ran in and dove onto the couch with a toy. The scene looked like any other Sunday. I let the normalness be the background. "Sit," I said. She did, the way she always did, hips tucked, posture sharp like she was ready to move. She smiled, waiting for the usual small talk. I did not smile back. I put the photos and documents on the table and pushed them toward her. Her face changed. For a flash, it was the face of the woman I loved. Then it hardened. "What's this?" she asked, voice small at first. "It's what you chose," I said. "It's decisions you made without me. It's the receipts, the emails, the pictures." My voice stayed steady. I laid out the facts like a set of stones, dates, places, names. I didn't yell, I didn't plead. I pointed to the photos where she and her ex were close. I pointed to the notes labeled family only. She fumbled, words tumbled out, denials at first. "You don't understand," then excuses. "It was for the boy," then anger. "You going through my things?" Her eyes shone with a heat that tried to turn their roles. She stood. Her hands trembled. "You always think the worst," she said. Her voice had the old edge. I let her speak. I let the sound of her do the work she could not. She told stories that tried to soften things. "We're co-parenting, it's not what you think." She looked at me like she wanted me to believe her. I had been in love with that look. Now it was a plea. I watched her body. She was a whirlwind of shame and defense. Her fingers drummed on the table. Her lip quivered. I could see the person behind the bravado, but I kept my hand on the folder. I had to be a man who made measured choices. "You left me out of it," I said. "You pretended it was family, and it was. You made plans that excluded me. You built a life without telling me." My voice was quiet, but the room seemed to tilt. I said what I needed to say with a small, constant clarity. She cried then, loud and honest and ugly. She reached for me like she might grab the thing that kept her afloat. I pulled away, not out of cruelty, out of purpose. She lunged with words and promises. "I can fix this," she said. "Ben, please don't," her eyes begged. I told her what I had done. I told her about the accounts, the moves, the documents I had filed. I told her I had talked to a lawyer. I told her I had secured our son's affairs. Her face went white. The room seemed to hold a sound like wind in the eaves. "This isn't the end," she whispered. "Please." Her voice now was small. She looked like a woman who had shrunk before a house. I felt no glee. I felt only the clean ache of finality. She had choices. I offered none. I had worked to be sure the law would hold. I had no need for public spectacle. I wanted truth and protection for my son. Her family called. Her mother's voice cracked when I told the truth in a short sentence. Cousins whispered at the church. People I had known my whole life began to pull at the seams. The cultural weight landed on both of us. Expectations, shame, faith. The room around us hummed with it. She knew then she had already lost more than I had taken. Her face told the story before words did. The man she had leaned on, her ex, could do little against the quiet backbone I had made. She reached for me one last time. I held my hand out for our son instead. The boy ran into my arms and wrapped his small arms around my neck like he always had. The house made a small, honest sound of a father being a father. She watched. That was the end of the conversation. She had known she had already lost. What followed was not fireworks. It was the steady work of consequence. Nancy fought. She hired lawyers. She cried in phone calls. Her ex tried to weave his way back into the story. But the evidence was quiet and clean. The account moves, the receipts, the emails, they were facts. The law is not moved by charm. It is moved by documentation. She lost access to certain joint accounts. We had safeguards that protected our son's nest. Home equity was divided by what was fair and by what had been proven. Some doors closed for her. A job she thought secure came under scrutiny when her employer heard about the conduct tied to misrepresentations at the workplace. It was not revenge in the savage sense. It was the system doing its job when given the truth. Family did not react as one. Some called me a steady rock. Some said I was cold. Cousins took sides. The church had long conversations. The neighborhood watched. People whispered in the barber shop. Some shook my hand. Some would not look me in the eye. I expected it. I expected the community to be messy when blood and family mix with betrayal. Nancy's pride took a hit. Her friends stopped inviting her to certain events. The parties slowed. Some doors she had counted on were no longer open. Regret settled like dust on her shoulders. She started to show up at family gatherings differently, smaller. She apologized to people who deserved better than her half-truths. The humility was late, but it was honest. Our son, the center of it all, was my first care. He asked questions in small ways. "Why mommy sad?" he asked one morning. I answered with a truth he could carry. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, baby. We keep him safe." He hugged me and let the world be simple again. That was the victory I wanted most. I walked away from the kitchen table the day the arrangement was final. I left the folder on the shelf. I went outside and sat on the porch. The air smelled like rain. The sun set slow. I breathed in and out. I did not feel like a victor in a movie. I felt like a man who had protected what mattered. Nancy packed a few things and moved to a smaller place. She called less. She tried to rebuild a life without the ease she had known. I tried not to gloat. I did not gloat. I felt only the quiet peace that comes after a storm. I guarded that peace like a lantern. The community began to close its mouth over time. People forgave. People forgot. Some things stayed. I lost some friendships. I gained a sharper sense of who I could be. My son still runs through the house. He still laughs loud. He still tucks the ribbon in his hair. Life kept moving forward. There was a night months later when my son and I sat on the roof and watched the city lights. He fell asleep on my shoulder. I held him and felt the steady weight of what I had protected. I thought about mercy and justice. I thought about how small moves, quiet, lawful, can change a life. I thought about how being a man meant more than anger. It meant responsibility. I had taken nothing in malice. I had taken what I needed to keep my boy safe. Nancy's downfall was not my joy. My joy was my son's safety and my peace. That is the outcome. The rest of it was consequence. If betrayal comes for you, don't run on hot anger. Move with calm, keep records, protect the ones you love, pray if you pray, talk to a lawyer if you need to, be strong, not loud. I was a man with a storm inside and a map in my hands. That map saved my son and my future. I lost the picture of what I thought we would be. I gained a clear path forward. I learned that power is quiet. I learned that dignity can be kept even when someone tries to take it away. I learned how to be present for my son in ways that mattered more than revenge. If you are listening and you feel that same hollow in your chest, breathe slow, build your case. Love your child with every piece of you. Move with purpose. The night you walk away can be the night you walk toward your new life. Keep your heart. Keep your head. Be the man you tell your son you are.